Phrasal verbs are essential if we want to speak fluent and natural English. So in this masterclass, we are going to examine them in detail. We are going to look at what phrasal verbs even are. We're going to look at why they are important. We're going to look at how we can learn and start using them. And of course, I have 30 examples to share with you. Let's get started. Hello there everyone and welcome back to GSL-English. My name is Gideon and I am here as always to help you speak natural, fluent and confident English. And that is exactly what we are going to do in this masterclass today. So as I said, we are all about phrasal verbs today. Everything in this class is about phrasal verbs. Now, perhaps you feel confident with phrasal verbs. Perhaps you use them regularly. Well, still, make sure you watch this whole lesson as there might be some new examples that you can start using. But maybe you've heard of phrasal verbs, but you haven't started using them in your English yet. Or maybe there's something completely new to you. Well, don't worry. In this lesson, we're going to break them down in a relaxed way and understand what they are, understand why they are important, why do they help us to speak more natural and fluent English, and then most importantly, I'm going to share with you exactly how you can learn them and start using them. That's the important bit. So if you are a returning viewer or listener, thank you so much for joining me again. I do appreciate your support. But if you are new here, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to my channel as I post weekly lessons and podcasts, really to immerse you in the English language in a relaxed and natural way. So we're going to get started. Now, as always, you know, I do recommend taking notes if you can. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it all on the screen. But if you can take notes, it just helps you to connect what we learn with your memory and you're much more likely to apply it. But also, I do recommend a cup of tea. So this is all about studying in a relaxed way. So if you want to grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of coffee, whatever it is, go do that now and then come back and we will jump into our lesson. So firstly, let's examine exactly what are phrasal verbs. We hear that term thrown around all the time on social media, lessons and different things. But what are they? What actually is a phrasal verb? Well, a phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and one or more particles, usually prepositions or adverbs. That when we put them together, when we use them together, they create a meaning that is different from the original verb. And these particles, these prepositions or adverbs, they change or add meaning to the verb in a way that can't really be understood by looking at the verb and the particle separately. So they really change the meaning of the verb that we are using. So to put it simply, a phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and one or more particles, usually prepositions or adverbs. But that might raise a question. Well, what is a verb? What is an adverb? What is a preposition? So let's look into that. So the adverb or preposition that we use, it's called a particle. But let's make sure we're clear on what they are. A verb is a word that describes an action. For example, to swim, to read, to run, to walk. Or it can be a state of being. So to live, to understand, a state that we are currently in. A preposition is a small word that describes the relationship between two words. For example, the cat is on the chair, on being the preposition, or in the drawer, under the table, or inside the bag. So the preposition is describing the relationship between two words. So the cat is on the chair. And prepositions usually deal with time, location, place, or direction and movement. So, for example, since, by, a certain time, in, below, opposite, under, inside, for a location or a place, or across, down, up, talking about movement. So that is a preposition. An adverb is a word that describes a verb, an adjective, or other adverbs. So an adverb, it really is adding more detail and more description to what we are talking about. So that is what a phrasal verb technically is. A phrasal verb. Verb being a word that describes an action, and then we combine that with a preposition or an adverb. So there's the technical side of it. But that doesn't really help, because it really makes it quite confusing. And phrasal verbs can be tricky or difficult for English learners, because when we look at them on a piece of paper, when we look at them in writing, we can't often get the meaning. It doesn't make sense. The meaning is often idiomatic. It's not literal. And a single verb can combine with different particles to form several phrasal verbs with distinct meanings. So one phrasal verb can have different meanings, and one verb can combine with different prepositions and adverbs to have different meanings. For example, let's take the word look. Okay, so here we have a simple verb, look. That means to direct your gaze, to look at something. Look at the cat. You see, cats are running through as the theme as examples. I love cats, so there you go. So we have that simple verb, to look. Let's take a phrasal verb, to look up. Now, if we take that literally, we mean to look up in the sky. But if I said to you, I need to look up some information on that, well, okay, we can't take that literally. So what that means is to search for information, to look up, to search on the internet through studying. Okay, so let's take another phrasal verb with look, to look after. Look after. Well, if we take that literally, to look after what? Are we talking about time? Are we talking about an object? Well, in this instance, this phrasal verb means to take care of. I need to look after my son this weekend, to take care of. He is under my responsibility. So we've got phrasal verbs with different meaning, all rooting from one verb, which here is to look. Or another example, let's imagine here we have three words in a phrasal verb, to look forward to. Look forward to. Of course, we're not talking literally, but if we are looking forward to something, it means that we anticipate it with pleasure. We are excited. I'm looking forward to seeing my cat this evening. I know, I lead a sad life, but I like cats. There we are. I'm looking forward to seeing my cat this evening. So this is why it often gets confusing, because we take one verb and then we add all of these particles afterwards, these prepositions and adverbs, and then the meaning changes. But don't worry. In a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how you should learn them. And it is not by word. Okay, so we don't want to take one verb and then learn all the phrasal verbs to do with that word. We need to stop that. If you're doing that, stop it. It doesn't really help. I'm going to show you what we can do. But before we get into that, let's just establish why are phrasal verbs important? Because at this point you might be thinking, I'm a little bit confused. Well, don't worry too much about the technical side of it. Don't worry too much about the structure. It's important to know. But the biggest thing is that we start to learn them, because phrasal verbs really are what separate, advanced speakers of English or intermediate from beginners, really. It is what makes us sound fluent, and they are frequent in everyday speech. Native speakers use phrasal verbs all the time without even knowing that they are using them. It's just part of our language, especially in informal spoken English. They're often common in conversation than their formal single words counterparts. So I'll give you an example. Instead of continue, so let's imagine you're at work and someone comes up to you, says, would you like to come for a coffee? Would you like just to go to the shop for a coffee? And you said, I am going to continue with my work. That sounds extremely formal, doesn't it? It sounds a little bit official. So that's where we bring a phrasal verb in. No, I'm going to carry on with my work. I'm going to carry on with my work. Have a great time. Subtle difference, but that phrasal verb has now made us sound a lot more natural, fluent. And in turn, the people that we are talking to are much more likely to respond to what we are saying in a natural way. Do you want to come for a coffee? No, I'm going to continue with my work. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if we want to sound more natural, we could say, I'm just going to carry on. I'm going to carry on and I'll see you later. Or instead of investigate, perhaps again at work, your boss comes up to you and says, the figures don't add up for March. Okay, no problem. You could say, I'm going to investigate that further. I'm going to investigate that. But if there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm not saying not to use that vocabulary. But if we want to sound more natural, more fluent, more kind of authentic, we bring in a phrasal verb. I'll look into that. I'm going to look into that, which is a phrasal verb. Again, we're taking that verb look, means to investigate. So you can see why they are so important is because they're in everyday speech. Generally, every verb we're talking about, there seems to be a phrasal verb equivalent. But another reason that they are superb and really important to learn is because they are versatile and efficient. Versatile means they can change, they can adapt to all different situations. So phrasal verbs allow you to express ideas in a more natural and concise way. By concise, they mean more specific, more direct way, whilst still being casual and approachable. For example, let's imagine someone says, I heard you lost your job. How you doing? I'm getting by. I've got some work. I'm getting by. Well, that is much shorter and more relaxed than saying, I am surviving or I am managing in the difficult circumstances. Again, either of those is fine. It's the use of the English language. But when we say, I'm getting by, which means, times are difficult, but we're surviving. We're managing. There's nothing wrong with those alternative words, but that get by is more casual. But we can kind of now tailor how the person is going to respond because it makes us a lot more approachable. And that's what we want. Speaking English, we want ourselves to come across as approachable, so people are much more likely to respond and talk to us. That is what phrasal verbs do. It's almost like the difference between a robot and a human. We have textbook English, then we've got phrasal verbs that just really are natural. And finally, I know I've spoken about this, but they are essential for fluency. Learning phrasal verbs can significantly improve listening comprehension and spoken fluency because they are so part of everyday conversation. They are integrated into every conversation. If you can understand and start using phrasal verbs, you are guaranteed to sound more natural and confident. So understanding them and start using them. Okay, so I can't stress it enough. Phrasal verbs are really, really essential. They are vital if you want to sound more fluent and speak English in a more natural way. So how can we learn them? What do? Do we take verbs, look, run, whatever it is, and then write down 20 phrasal verbs underneath that? No. It's actually a lot easier than that. And it's actually a lot more individual. You can tailor learning phrasal verbs to you. So I'm going to show you exactly how I would do that, and I do that with many of my students. So here are my tips for learning phrasal verbs. The first is to learn them in context. Now, regular viewers and subscribers to this channel will know that I am a massive advocate of contextual learning. Okay, it's the same with phrasal verb. Just like with vocabulary, if we want to learn it efficiently, we learn it in context. Phrasal verbs, we learn them in context. So rather than memorizing lists of phrasal verbs, lists and lists and lists, you want to learn them in context through sentences, stories that help you to remember their meanings more naturally. So for example, let's imagine that you take a phrasal verb. I don't know, let's take one. Let's take that one to do with travel. For example, to take off, which means your plane is going to take off from the runway. So rather than just writing down take off, and the meaning, give it context in your life. Think of a flight that you went on, or a flight you would like to go on. What time does my flight take off to Japan? What time does my flight take off to America? Context. Give it context. And now the context of that sentence gives you the meaning. So you're much more likely to remember it and start using it because you've given it context. Now, the second way we can do this is the most important way, and that is to learn them by theme or meaning. Organizing phrasal verbs around a particular theme is the way to do it. For example, travel, relationships, work, family, emotion, business, technology. That is how you learn phrasal verbs. Set yourself a theme and then learn phrasal verbs to say things that you would normally say in the more casual way. And we're going to go through that all in a moment when I start on our 30 phrasal verbs. We're going to do that. We're going to take it by theme and learn 5 phrasal verbs for each theme. And the great thing about this is you can tailor it to your life. So perhaps you are working in the cooking industry. Okay, well, today I'm going to write down 5 phrasal verbs to do with cooking. Or in business, writing emails, I'm going to write down 5 phrasal verbs I can use in business emails. Cater it to your life, to what you are doing. Don't learn them by verb or singular words. Learn them by context and theme, which we're going to do in a moment. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, so don't worry. And the third thing that I want you to do is practice, 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 and just keep practicing. The more you hear, the more you use phrasal verbs, the more familiar they will become to you. It might feel weird at first, or you might be worried about making mistakes. That's all right. If you've ever gone to the gym, the first time you step into a gym, you try a new exercise, a new machine, you feel weird. You feel like everybody's staring at you, or you're going to make a mistake. It's okay, because eventually you get used to it. It's the same with phrasal verbs. It might seem a little bit weird at first, or a little bit uncomfortable. Don't worry. It will get easier, I promise. So I want you to learn them in context, give them context to your life. Definitely group them by theme, meaning, or a particular theme, whatever that is, to do with your life. And thirdly, practice them as much as possible. Okay, so now we are going to start on the 30 phrasal verbs I want to share with you. So as we go through this, okay, I'm going to present to you 30 phrasal verbs with their definition and examples, but also this is how you should go about learning them. Okay, so I would, even if it's taking 5 a week, you take 5 on Monday, and then throughout the week, you use them, you study them, you memorize them, you test yourself on them, and then the next week, you do 5 more. It is much better to learn phrasal verbs in a quality way rather than quantity. That is how we do it. So the first area that we are going to look at of our phrasal verbs is business. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 phrasal verbs to do with business. The first is to set up. To set up. We might set up a meeting. We might set up a new branch. We might, set up a video call. And that means to start or establish something. It could be a business, an organization, a system, a meeting, whatever it is. They decided to set up a new branch in London to expand their operations. They decided to set up a new branch. A branch is a new kind of office or building in another location. Or more informally, you could say, look, let's set up a meeting for tomorrow. Let's set up a meeting with our customers for tomorrow. Good alternative to start, or let's organize, let's set up. The second phrasal verb is to take over. To take over. And this means to gain control of something, such as a company or a business, or it could be even a certain task at work. Let me take over. I've got this. You wouldn't say, let me gain control. It just sounds completely weird, doesn't it? Let me take over. As an example, a larger corporation is planning to take over our company next year. They're gaining control. They are the ones taking the lead. Thirdly, to run out of. To run out of. And that means to use up a supply of something. Typically a resource or a product. Could even be time. So you no longer have an amount of something that you need. I've recently run out of milk. So I need to go down the shops to get milk to make the perfect cup of tea. As an example, we've run out of stock for that item, so it's currently unavailable to customers. We've run out. No more. The supply is gone. The fourth phrasal verb, to carry out. And this means basically to do something, to perform or complete a task, a plan, or an action. As an example, the team will carry out market research before launching the new product. So rather than just saying the team will do, or the team is going to perform, will carry out, perform or complete a task. And the fifth phrasal verb for business is to look into. To look into. We looked at this one last time, but we do use this a lot in business, which means to investigate or examine something in detail. As an example, we're going to look into the issue to find out what caused the production delay. So there's been a delay in production. We're going to look into it. We're going to examine and investigate in detail. So there you have 5 phrasal verbs all based around business. Now, let's imagine that you came up with those 5 phrasal verbs, or you take these ones from this lesson. Examine these tomorrow. Start using them as soon as you can, even if that's at home, writing sentences down and reading them out loud. But take those 5 phrasal verbs for the next week and ingrain them in your mind. Test yourself them. Set up. What does that mean? Take over. How do I use that? Test yourself. Say them out loud, even if it's to yourself in a mirror. Learning them by subject and theme is the way to go. And then once you've got these sorted, once you've got these in your mind, then you can look at 5 more business phrasal verbs. And then slowly kind of increasing your personal database of phrasal verbs. Okay, moving on. The next area that we are going to look into is medical. We all get sick. We all got to go to the doctors. So here are some phrasal verbs we can start using to sound more natural. To come down with. That means to start suffering from an illness. You start to feel the symptoms, feeling a bit lethargic, whatever it is, coming down with something. I think I'm coming down with the flu. I've been feeling really tired and achy. Your body's hurting. You're coming down with the flu. Often in English, we just say, I'm coming down with something. I can feel it. Second phrasal verb is to pass out. If one passes out, it means that we faint or we lose consciousness. As an example, he almost passed out from the pain after the accident. Sometimes a doctor, depending on why you are visiting, they might say, if you passed out at all, if you felt faint, well, you can use this phrasal verb or you can understand what it actually means. The third one, not too pleasant, but there you go. To throw up. To throw up. And of course, we're taking that verb throw, which means to throw something physically, but because they're phrasal verbs, they're annoying, they don't make sense. It doesn't mean that at all. To throw up means to vomit or to be sick. The patient began to feel nauseous and threw up after the medication. Feel nauseous, feel sick. So they threw up. They were sick after the medication. Next phrasal verb, to fight off. So we might be fighting off an illness, to try to overcome or recover from something. She's taking vitamins to fight off the cold she caught last week. So she's fighting the illness, taking vitamins to fight it off. Great phrasal verb. I'm trying to fight off this cold at the moment. And sometimes it's a fight because it's a struggle. And the fifth phrasal verb for in a medical context is to break out in something. If we break out in something, it means to develop a rash or a skin condition suddenly. And this could happen because of an allergic reaction, for example. After eating peanuts, he broke out in hives all over his arms. So ate peanuts, had an allergic reaction, so his skin reacted badly to this. So he broke out in hives or a rash. There you go. 5 more idioms. Idioms. I knew I was going to do that. These aren't idioms. These are phrasal verbs. If I have said idioms at all throughout this podcast or this episode without realizing, just know that I did mean phrasal verbs. Let's move on to the third area. Family. Family. This is a nice one. To look after. Looked at this one before. To take care of someone or something. For example, I need to look after my younger sister while our parents are away. Look after. To bring up means to raise a child or to mention a topic in conversation. So, for example, again, now we have a phrasal verb here which has 2 meanings. To raise a child, to bring up, to raise them from child, infant, to teenager, to adult, whatever it is. They decided to bring up their children in a bilingual environment. Great idea. A multi-language environment. They decided to bring up their children. But as a second meaning, to bring up means to bring up a topic in conversation. But of course, here we are talking about family. And I put that one in there just to highlight that phrasal verbs can have different meanings. That is why we learn them in context. So then we might add that second meaning, a topic in conversation, when we are, again, looking at business phrasal verbs, or we're looking at conversation phrasal verbs. But here we're going to focus on that main meaning is to raise a child, to bring up. Okay, to get along with. So in family, this would mean to have a friendly relationship with someone. My brother and I get along very well. We hardly ever argue. You get along with them. You're close to them. You're friendly, And we can also use this to talk about friends or colleagues. But right now, the topic is family. So we focus on family. And we could also use this in a negative context, saying, I don't get along with blah, blah, blah. So to get along with, to have a friendly relationship with someone. To settle down. To settle down. This means to establish a permanent residence, often used when referring to starting a family. So, to settle down. I want to settle down, start having some kids, I want to start a family. Maybe get married, start a family, whatever it is. For example, after years of traveling, they finally decided to settle down and buy a house. To settle, meaning that they don't plan on moving anytime soon. Settling down with the idea, in this context, perhaps of starting a family or just being a little bit more secure and comfortable. And the fifth example is to grow up, to grow up. And this means to develop from a child into an adult. I grew up in a small town surrounded by nature. And this is actually true of myself. I grew up in a tiny little village in Kent, country pub, post office, had my mates around. It was a brilliant childhood. So that was where I grew up. But sometimes as well, we can use this as a bit of an insult. Maybe you say a joke and somebody takes it personally. I'll grow up. Stop being a child. You're an adult. I'll grow up. It's not so much of a big deal. So there you go. Five phrasal verbs to do with family. Okay. I don't know what we're up to. Is that 15? 5, 10, 15? I don't know, actually. Okay. Emotion is the next area. We want to talk about emotion, but of course, when we talk about emotion, we want to sound authentic and we want people to relate to us. So we bring in phrasal verbs. The first one is to cheer up. To cheer up. And this means to become or make someone feel happier. As an example, she was feeling down, but her friends cheered her up by taking her out for ice cream. So she's feeling down for whatever reason, just feeling a bit sad, down in the dumps. So friends took her out for ice cream and cheered her up. The second, to calm down. Calm down. And this means to relax after being angry, upset, or even excited. After the argument, he took a few deep breaths to calm down. And we calm down from a variety of emotions. We could be really angry or upset. We take a moment to calm down. Or something really exciting might have just happened, and we take a moment to calm down, to come back to that base level of emotion. Excuse me. Thirdly, to break down. To break down. Again, this phrasal verb can have multiple definitions depending on the theme, but let's look at it to do with emotions. If we talk about breaking down emotionally, it means that we lose control of our emotions. We start crying or whatever it is. We just don't contain them anymore. For example, she broke down in tears when she heard the bad news. Couldn't control it. To freak out is the next one. To freak out. This means to become very anxious, upset, excited, scared, whatever it is. I almost freaked out when I realized I had lost my phone. That happens to all of us, doesn't it? You look in your pockets. You go, where's my phone? Where's my phone? Where's my phone? Then you realize it's just on the sofa. I freaked out. Very anxious, upset, scared, baffled, excited. Great phrasal verb to use. And the next one I really love, well, not love, but it's a great phrasal verb, and it is to bottle up. We might bottle up our emotions. And this means basically to hide our emotions instead of expressing them. We suppress emotions instead of expressing them. He tends to bottle up his feelings, which makes him more stressed. Some people just tend to do this. You bottle it up. You take your emotions, you might be feeling a certain way, and you just bottle it up, you put a cap on it, and you don't express it. So there you go. 5 phrasal verbs with emotions. Okay, now, exercise. Okay, we are on to exercise. You might know some of these, but it's good to remind yourself of them. The first one is to warm up. To warm up. Take it literally, warming up our body. But in the sense of like to physically warm up. I mean, like with a blanket or with heat. But as a phrasal verb with exercise, the definition is to prepare the body for physical activity, often, by doing light exercises or stretches. Before the match, the players warmed up by jogging around the field. So they're getting their bodies ready and prepared for the game. To work out. You go to the gym and you work out. Exercise in order to improve fitness or health. For example, she works out at the gym 3 times a week to stay in shape. To work out, to exercise. After a game or a certain period of exercise, we bring in the next phrasal verb. To cool down. Cool down. To gradually reduce physical activity after exercise. To help the body return to a resting state. So perhaps after some intense exercise at the gym, you might just do a slow walk on a treadmill, just to calm the body down. After running 5 miles, it's important to cool down to avoid muscle cramps. So you don't just go from running to stopping. You cool down a bit. Just let your body just relax and unwind. Very good. 4th phrasal verb, to take up. To take up. The definition of this is to start a new hobby or activity, often referring to a sport. I've decided to take up tennis this summer. as a way to stay active. That's not true, by the way. I have not decided to take up tennis. Tried a bit of pickleball this year. That's a big thing everyone's talking about. I don't know if you've played pickleball, but I tried a bit of that, but I decided not to take it up. It's not for me. Okay, and to kick off. If you're a British football fan, you'll know this one. What time's kick-off? What time's kick-off? The definition is to start a game or event, especially in sports like football, or if you are American, soccer, but we'll call it football. As an example, the match will kick off at 3 p.m, so make sure you're there early. And that generally is the standard time for games to kick off in England. Okay, and our final area of phrasal verbs we're going to look into is technology. Okay, technology. The first one is to log in or to log on. And this is to access a computer system or website by entering your details such as username and password. You often have to log on to websites, to company portals, whatever it is. Oh, I forgot my password, so I couldn't log into my account this morning. I forgot my password. Happened to me recently. I don't know how I did it because I only have about 3 passwords I use for everything. But I could not get into an account. I can't remember what it was for. But it was a nightmare. When you have to reset your password, they send you an email and you don't receive the email. Pain in the neck. So log in to access a computer system. To set up. Now this is interesting because we looked at this phrasal verb in our business section. Business, set up, to arrange, to organize. Well, here in technology, it is to install or configure software, hardware, or a system. So it's the idea of installing, getting something working. For example, I spent the afternoon setting up my new laptop and transferring all my files, setting it up, getting it ready to use. So again, that's why we use phrasal verb by theme, not by wording. This is quite an easy one, but to plug in. It's one that sometimes learners of English forget. To plug in, this is to connect a device to a power source or another device. So where you plug the computer in at the wall. Make sure you plug in your phone to charge it overnight, something I always forget to do. Fourth phrasal verb with technology is to shut down. To shut down, to turn off a computer or system properly. Remember to shut down your computer before leaving the office to save energy. So you should shut down your computer. This is something I'm really guilty of not doing. I very rarely shut my computer down. I just either close the lid and leave it on. But everyone tells me I should shut it down properly, but I don't. Perhaps you're the same. And the fifth phrasal verb, again, is something that I should do much more often, and that is to back up. Again, phrasal verb in different areas can have different meanings, but in this context, it means to make a copy of data or files to stop you from losing them in case the computer breaks or gets a virus, whatever it is. You back it up, maybe on another hard drive or an external device. It's important to back up your files regularly in case of a hard drive crash. Again, something that I don't do. So you have 5 phrasal verbs for technology there. So there you go. There's just some examples of phrasal verbs. But could you get the idea? The reason, I wanted to share some phrasal verbs with you. I wanted you to come away with some new phrasal verbs that you could start using. But the idea here is not to overcomplicate it. Learn them by theme. So what I would recommend is perhaps pick one of the themes that we've looked at here. Maybe it's emotion. That's something that can be quite difficult to convey in our second language. Take those phrasal verbs we've looked at in this lesson, okay? Try learning them over the next week. So this goes out on Wednesday. Until next Wednesday, just focus on those phrasal verbs. Learn them, use them, give them context in your life. Say them out loud. And just focus on those 5. And then next Wednesday, you add to that. Or you try another 5. That is how you start learning them. It is not by taking one verb, writing down hundreds of phrasal verbs with that word. It's useless. It won't do anything. But again, don't be scared to start using them because it might seem weird at first, but once you start using them, you get used to it. They become part of your kind of everyday English. It's really exciting because it unlocks this natural and authentic element to your English. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you. If you did get to this point and you stayed the whole way, Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. I'm thinking of preparing another masterclass on idioms. So if you are interested in that, let me know in the comments and I'll get that ready. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.